That's right, we're talking vampires today, guys. Let me just say, these fangs, they were gonna be a great idea. However, I can't fucking talk in them. So, thanks Halloween store, fucking $12. I would like to discuss vampires. And not just vampires in general. I don't want to spend any time talking about Twilight. Also, what the fuck happened to vampires? I always grew up knowing vampires were like scary and bloodthirsty monsters that like you couldn't trust, you were terrified. And now it's just fucking, they're all vegetarians. They're like, I only drink deer's blood and I can't fuck you until you're married to me, Bella. Like, it's stupid. I, instead, am going to tell you about the two historical figures that inspired the book Dracula by Bram Stoker. We are going to be talking about Vlad III, aka Vlad the Impaler, and Countess Elizabeth Bathory, aka the Blood Countess. Our story begins with Vlad in 1431. He was born into what is now Transylvania. Like, it's right fucking there, okay? Transylvania was called Wallachia back then, in the Hungarian Empire. His father was Vlad II. He was a war leader and he was inducted into a knightly order called the Order of the Dragon by the king of the Hungarian Empire. So this is what's really cool. Joining the Order of the Dragon gave Vlad II, Vlad III's father, a new name of Dracul, meaning dragon, in Hungarian. So Vlad III took the name Dracula, son of dragon. What? So Vlad III, like we said, we're in Wallachia. Vlad the Impaler became known as one of the most horrific people in Hungarian history to this day. He killed as many as 100,000 people and often killed them in unimaginable, horrific ways. Some was in battle because, again, they were fighting the Ottoman Empire. And so Vlad the Impaler, being this huge warlord, son of dragon, Dracula, he has to be the fucking best, dude. He built himself a brutal reputation across all of Eastern Europe. His main thing was impaling, obviously, and he would mount his victims like a trophy alongside territory that he had to scare the enemies. Like, no shit. And if you think like impaling was just like through the fucking chest, you know, like let him die and shit, like they show in like the photos, that's like nice. Like that's what there is nice. What actually impaling was that he would take a dull stick. It's in the history. He liked to pick a dull stick and insert it in a person's anus and just let the full weight of their body fall down on this stick. And they'd be alive for hours while this is happening. And if you were very unlucky, you'd be alive for days. You'd be like on this stick, like fucking, I don't know what you'd be doing. But it is terrifying. He would bathe in the blood of his enemies and even reported to sitting down at dinner amongst all of the impaled victims around him, listening to screams of these people while he ate dinner. Even reports of him drinking blood of his enemies and dipping blood in bread and eating it. Next, I am so excited to talk about this female, okay? She is one of the most prolific serial killer women in history. I'm talking about Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory, according to record, killed over 650 young women. Elizabeth was born in 1560 into immense wealth and then married rich. Like, score, this bitch. She married a rich count, and when he died, she was left all of his estates. Like, all of his estates. Like, this man was loaded. Ladies, get yourself a count. I'm gonna try. After he died and she took all over the estates and stuff, she was just like a baroness, like of the times. Like she like kept the household clean. Not a lot of people ever really saw her. She never really went out. Nobody knew what the fuck was going on until she was arrested in 1610. She was arrested on hundreds of counts of murder and torture. She kept detailed record. This is how she's a serial killer. Complete sociopath. Was like, oh, I want to like reread through my crimes again. All of her victims were women and young girls, as young as 12. The charges that she was brought against were strangling servants. She would strangle them. And in one account, it was always like with a silk scarf, which was like a very Turkish way to die. And that was very insulting because they were Hungarian. So she would sew the servant's mouth shut if they pleaded or screamed while she was like peeling their skin off like a potato. She even reported in one of her journals that she wrote that one of the girls had talked back to her after she had stripped the skin off of her back. She stuffed her own shit into this mouth of this servant and sewed it shut. She starved all of her servants. All of them were starving. She also would force... Okay, so if they were like, if the hunger got worse, she would force them to cut a piece of their own butt, fried in some butter, and she would watch them eat it while laughing as she ate an entire meal. She's a fucking psychopath. Oh my God. Okay, so you might also be saying, how the fuck did this lady get 650 servants and nobody asked questions? Remember I said she had all those fucking estates and shit? She had people in all of them. And then, during the end, this is how she got caught. She started getting sloppy, right? It was towards the end, she's aging, right? And she doesn't like that she's aging. So she starts drinking blood again. However, she rubbed some on her face at one point, and I think she was just high as fuck off the blood. It makes no goddamn sense. It says in her journals that she felt younger and her skin glowed as if she were with child. That's when her bloodthirst got even crazier, okay? She started only requesting the blood of virgins. So you had to be like 12 to like 15, 14. She got married when she was 15. So to me, when I was like hearing like 10-year-olds to like 14-year-olds, I was like, damn, what the fuck, a 10-year-old? But like, that 10-year-old is basically almost married soon, probably. She's probably gonna fuck her cousin and have another royal son. Anyways, all of this is happening, and you might be like, where the fuck is she getting all these servants, Kate? Oh, she opened up her own finishing school for young ladies. This finishing school was literally her taking these young girls and draining them of blood and bathing in it. She would bathe in blood twice a month, and she would rub it on her face to stay youthful. She wasn't caught until like this monk came, because he was, I think he got the word somehow, and so he went to go investigate. So he's like, you know what, we haven't seen Liz in a while. And he found dead girls strewn about the castle, drained of blood, some missing skin. One girl was burned completely to death by soldering irons. She was incarcerated in her own castle, only to die 5 years later. She deserved way more of a punishment, I think. Oh my God, what a psycho. And also, how'd you live that long in a castle incarcerated? Like, what were they feeding you? Like, I would have been like, eat your own fucking asshole, you fucking psychopath. You killed 650 people. Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, he really borrowed a lot from these two historical figures, Vlad and Liz. But he really also borrowed a lot from the author Emily Gerard. She wrote Romanian lore, like folklore, in this book called Transylvanian Superstitions. Some of the things that she wrote is what we know about vampires. The appearance of Dracula is owed more to fiction than folklore. John William Pledoria, 1816 novel The Vampire, is credited with the vampire as being an aristocrat rather than a corpse. So John Williams, he made it so that, you know, like Interview with a Vampire, like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are very sensual. Bram Stoker based his Dracula character not only on vampire lore, but also on werewolves. So in his novel, he talks about how Dracula has hair in the palms, and he turns into a werewolf in the 1992 movie where you see him, Gary Oldman, like transition into a vampire, which I was like, bro, what? I didn't know that happened. I didn't know that vampire werewolf thing was a Bram Stoker thing. Like, I literally remember like watching it on like Vampire Diaries with like that original guy who was both, like a hybrid. Like, I didn't know that the original Dracula that he wrote was mostly werewolf. I found that interesting. Bats were always just a thing of folklore, being evil omens. Like, bats have gotten a very bad rap, and I think that's why a lot of people are like, bat, fuck. In folklore, vampires would turn into dogs, evil omens, or like a mist. There were stories of like a white misty coming through the window, and then there would be a vampire there. The consumption of blood to keep a vampire young that he wrote about in the novel really comes from Elizabeth Bathory and her obsession to stay young. It also borrows tones. Everybody borrows tones from her for the pale skin, that they can't walk around in the day. That was never set in stone. The pale skin they got from her, and that she never left her home. That they only imagined that she would be leaving at night, because that's what a vampire does. They only live at night. So the consumption of blood for a vampire is to keep them ageless and young, and it's strong. So then there we go again with Vlad the Impaler, who is drinking his enemy's blood to stay strong. Driving a stake through the vampire's heart. That was from Gerard's Superstition Transylvania book. She had wrote about several stories where there would be somebody that they had buried, and then 3 days later they're showing up at their fucking house, and they're like, I'm really hungry. And then they're like, get the fuck out of here. We buried you like 3 days ago. Like, I'm busy. So they would go back to the gravesite, and other people would think it was a dream. They would go back to the gravesite, and they would open the casket, and that person, that corpse, had blood all over their face. So then they would drive a stake through the heart. And it wasn't even a wooden stake at first. It was a metal stake. That folklore changed again. There was some other story about white oak tree is the only wooden stake that can actually kill a vampire. I think that was like a Van Helsing thing. So again, Bram Stoker. If you were bitten by one of these undead that you buried, a couple days ago, and they're like fucking breaking into your house for some blood, and you were bit by them, what then they would do is they would kill you, because you can't turn into a vampire. They can't let that happen. To make sure that you really don't turn into a vampire, they would stake you, decapitate you, and then stuff your mouth full of garlic. That is also where we get the garlic from. Vampires don't give a shit about garlic. Like, they literally don't. That was a thing that people in Hungary did. And there you have it. A brief history about the two people that invoked complete terror and formed the vampire folklore. Thanks for watching.
It's all somewhere.